On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, you have questions, I have answers. We'll answer mailbag questions about the ongoing playoffs, the offseason ahead for the Raptors, and that rebrand that we all really seem to want. All coming up. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, May the 7th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that doesn't work very well, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great place to come hang out to talk about the playoffs, talk about the Raptors, talk about the draft. It's all going on in there. Plus, you will get access to Ask Me questions that could appear on a podcast such as today's. Again, it's free to join. It's a great little family we got building around the show. Link in the description of the podcast. We'd love to see you over in the Locked On Raps Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts on the audio side of things. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you support us on the audio apps. You can also go to YouTube and subscribe to the show. Go to the Locked On Raptors channel, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll get a push notification every single time the show is about to premiere, so you never miss a second of that sweet Locked On Raptors off-season action, baby. On today's show, as I mentioned off the top, we're taking your mailbag questions today. We got a few really good ones in a few different sort of categories. And so we'll try to rattle through as many as we can here while keeping the themes on point throughout. We'll talk a little about the sort of ideal offseason for the Raptors, what the plans could be, and how the draft lottery might shape those. Of course, the lottery just 5 days away. We'll get into some rebrand talk. But off the top, I want to talk about a couple of questions that are tied to the ongoing playoffs and their relation to the Toronto Raptors. Let's begin after game one last night between the Knicks and the Pacers with a question from Canadian Stinker Stonk Writer on Twitter. We love that handle. My goodness. Question is, does seeing Pascal and OG's success these playoffs make you happy or sad? I'm happy for them as individuals and people, but increasingly angry at the Raptors front office and how badly they botched this whole situation. Overall, hard to be positive about it in the entire situation. And I'm reading too fast for me to read the rest of the question as it scrolls along the bottom of the screen, but hard to feel positive since we got hosed. Look, really good question from Canadian Stinker Stonk Writer. I think I disagree that they got hosed on the OG trade. I've talked about this a little bit even this week. I have no issues with the OG trade considering the circumstances the team was in. I think they were right to hold out for players over picks in exchange for him. And I think Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett have completely accelerated this Raptors recentering around Scotty Barnes and made it a whole lot easier to envision this team getting back to competitive ball sometime soon. In particular, Quickley, the skill set he brings, the pick and roll play, the vertical spacing he offers, just kind of making teams have to worry the second he crosses over half court. It's a really game-changing acquisition for the Raptors. I don't think it can be really overstated how big a deal it is to get Quickley on this team to pair with Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett being as good as he was after the trade is just gravy on top of a trade that I would have been pretty happy with anyway. And so, to see OG succeed, it just was never going to happen this way with the way the Raptors roster was constructed. You can, have your quibbles with, hey, they should have just kept him and paid him and then figured out the guard situation some other way, which, hey, it's possible. But I don't know how you're getting a guard as good as Emmanuel Quickley without trading OG Anunoby, frankly. We saw there was not such a player available in exchange for Pascal Siakam, and it did feel like trading OG all along was going to be the move that yielded the best return, and that is proven to be true, and I just think it was kind of a necessary evil. I have no qualms watching OG Anunoby be really, really good. in the playoffs. I think, that one had kind of come to its logical end. The Pascal one, yeah, I don't need to relitigate my thoughts. The Coles notes, think it's a bad trade, think it's going to age very poorly, think it was premature to trade away Siakam when you had quickly Barrett, Siakam, Barnes together as a group that we're seeing right now. Like, look at the Eastern Conference, look at the teams that are still alive. The Cavaliers ain't no great shakes. The Pacers, we love them, but ain't no great shakes. Like, I think a core of quickly Barrett, Siakam, Barnes very credibly could have been a top 6 foursome in the Eastern Conference, a foursome worthy of guiding a team to the top 6, that is. And so, yeah, I think that trade, if you feel upset about it and you're watching the Pacers being like, hey, why couldn't that be the Raptors? Don't think it would have been this year because the first half of the season was such a lost cause. But certainly, I think going into next year, if you had those 4 guys together, you could get pretty ambitious with your sort of hopes and dreams for the season, considering the state of flux the Eastern Conference seems to be in, which, again, so it's hard to be happy about the Siakam thing and seeing him succeed with the Pacers and thinking, like, why couldn't the Raptors have just kept this going? I understand all the reasons for it, but I also understand you, Canadian stinker stonk writer, if you're not feeling so rosy about the return. Ultimately, I'm having a good time watching these guys play, because I'll always enjoy watching OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam play basketball. And I'm rooting for their successes, obviously, against one another. It's a whole different thing. A pretty good tete-a-tete last night between the two. Some wins for Siakam, some wins for OG in that one-on-one matchup. Emotionally complicated, to say the least. But I think at this point, feel free to sort of question the Siakam trade all you want. They totally did get hosed, to your point. But the OG one, I think you just kind of got to make your peace with. It was just the necessary move. And the Raptors, I think, bailed themselves out pretty well with the return they got in exchange for OG Anunoby. And I think that those sort of fruits will be seen kind of in full bloom next season once the team is starting fresh from square one on day one, and building from there. Let's get to another question about the postseason that comes from Jay Rich, who has 2 questions. The first is, when do we get the over-under results? For those who don't know what this means, of course, the over-unders contest that we do every year, we will be taking that up, and someone's going to win tickets to a game next season. Jay Rich is, of course, our defending champion, which I am understanding now is why the question is here from Jay Rich. Looking to go back-to-back with the over-unders picks. Those will be evaluated after the All-NBA teams are dropped. And we have all of the postseason award information. So we are a completist in the way that we can go and evaluate and score the points. So keep an eye out for that once the All-NBA teams are out. Anyway, the actual question here from Jay Rich is, does the apparent changing of the guard in the league favor a rebuilding Raptors team? New talent seems to be dominating these playoffs. It's a really good question. I don't know how much it helps or hinders the Raptors going forward. Ultimately, when the NBA is, in the NBA at any given time, I don't think you can really be sort of doing your own thing with an eye on what everyone else is doing and what the situations are around the league. Every team building situation is different. Every team building situation depends on having high-end talent to get to the place you want to go. And no matter who the top end teams are at any given time, or the sort of the barriers to making it to a finals or whatever, you got to worry about what's in your own house before you worry about what other teams are doing. And that's where the Raptors are at right now. They're trying to build up enough talent to be one of these teams that can be part of the changing of the guard. And I certainly think Scotty Barnes is a good enough player to eventually be the type of guy who can, be one of those faces of the changing guard of the league. Yeah, you'd like it if he was doing the Anthony Edwards thing where he's like all of a sudden becomes Zoomer Michael Jordan out of nowhere and is carrying the Wolves and looks like he might just go win the damn thing at age 22. That doesn't happen for most guys. That only happens for the most select few of high-end all-time greats, essentially. Scotty Barnes may not be that, but I certainly think there's a lot there to work with based on what we saw in his 3rd season. And so that's the important part, right? No matter where the state of the league is in terms of talent, can you get yourself one of the 10 to 15 best players in the league to give yourself a passable shot at being a competitive annual postseason perennial team? I think Scotty Barnes is on the way to being that. And so I think that feels pretty good, regardless of who the best in the conference are or the best in the league are that you got to overcome. Weird stuff's going to happen, right? Injuries take place, bad bracket luck, et cetera, et cetera. I do think the changing of the guard in the NBA in general kind of suggests that this era of parity is not going anywhere. I think it's here to stay. The way the financial implications are going to come in this summer with the new CBA taking full effect, I think that's only going to increase the difficulty of accruing a bunch of talent and, being all right and being able to kind of build a team year over year with it. I think teams are going to have to be more selective. Talent's going to be more spread out, most likely. But it still comes down to talent at the end of the day. And if you have some of the best players in the world, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. It's just kind of history of the NBA stuff suggests that's the case. And so, the changing of the league, it might sort of make the Eastern Conference feel a little bit more gettable if a lot of the stars are concentrated out west again with Anthony Edwards, Victor Wembanyama, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, on down the list, Nikola Jokic. Like, the West is totally stacked with potentially franchise-altering, game-changing, championship landscape-shifting players. Maybe that makes the Eastern Conference more gettable. But in general, I think you got to just kind of worry about what's going on in your own house and figure out, how to build your own team from where you are, regardless of what the context of the league is, because it's constantly changing. We're talking about a new guard now. Things go wrong, guys decline, guys have steps back in their development, and we could be talking about a very different landscape a year from now that we're talking about right now. That said, it seems like the old guard is very much on its way out, and the new guard is going nowhere anytime soon. So, I think we'll leave it there on the questions related to the playoffs and how they tie into the Raptors. We'll come back on the other side, and we'll get into some thoughts about the offseason and what the Raptors' plan is going to be, what their course of action will be, and what is the ideal starting lineup for the Raptors to go into next season with after this offseason's moving and shaking. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, at this time of year, any time of year, it's important to have someone to talk to as you try to lay out your goals, as you try to make decisions for your life. Maybe you're well into 2024 and you haven't quite gotten to start on the stuff you wanted to do this season. That's okay. There's still plenty of time, and a therapist can be there to help you, guide you through decisions and, kind of get you in touch with what your values are. What are the things that keep you going? And from there, you can make the decisions that are going to make you a happier person in your life. Maybe you have a relationship that needs a little bit more TLC. Maybe you have a big career decision. Maybe you're dealing with some major trauma. There are all these different things that could lead you to therapy, and BetterHelp can be a great place for you to get it started. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You can visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Take the quick questionnaire to sign up. Get matched with a therapist. You can switch anytime as well for no additional charge. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, back at it here with the mailbag. Thanks to those of you who sent questions in. If I don't get to all of them, I may do another mailbag tomorrow just to kind of finish off if some straggler questions came in as well. We got a lot of good ones. I don't want to give anyone the short shrift, but we'll get to as many as we possibly can here on today's show. Moving our attention to the offseason now and what the Raptors' plans will be. Let's get a question in here from Mr. Krister asking, how do you think Masai will approach the draft and upcoming free agency? Will draft selections ultimately influence free agency, or will these be more independent of one another? This is a really good question. It's tough, right? I think, in a dream world, you draft for need, and then those needs become instantly filled, and everyone is hunky-dory and happy and moving on. It's not really how it works, right? Like, guys take time to form into NBA players, not just NBA players, but winning NBA players. You can have all the exciting rookies you want. 90% of rookies are not impacting winning on a high level. You have 2 or 3 in the playoffs this year who are rookies who are tangibly doing things to improve their team station and drive positive play when they're on the floor. It's a hard thing to do. And so I don't think any draft picks they make necessarily are going to then go and solve all of their on-court positional needs going into next season. It's got to be a little bit of both. I think the approach question is very much going to depend on what happens with the draft lottery. Do they keep their pick? Do they convey their pick? Coming up on Friday, I'm going to be joined by S. Baraheni, the wonderful, he's an everyman in sports media now, but from SDPN, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have the sort of final definitive keep or convey debate about the Raptors draft pick, which of course is top 6 protected, owed to the Spurs. If it falls out of the top 6, they have the 6th best lottery odds right now. You know the math by now. It is more likely than not that they are going to drop out of the top 6 and give that pick to the Spurs, which will have a cascading effect of what they can do in the offseason, right? If they don't keep their pick, the cap space avenue becomes a little bit more viable as opposed to 28 million bucks or so in cap space. If they keep the pick, they're going to be down to 21, 22, as low as, if they go up to number 1, as low as like 17 or 18 million bucks in space to work with, which isn't a ton. If they convey the pick, then there's a lot more cap space to work with. That will inform whether or not they want to try to bring back Gary Trent Jr. using his bird rights and keeping Bruce Brown around and exercising his option. That obviously takes the cap space route out entirely. But if they have a lot of cap space and they feel like there are a guy or two out there they can split the cap space between who are better fits for the roster than Trent and Bruce Brown, then it might be goodbye to Gary Trent and Bruce Brown. It's all going to hinge on what happens in the lottery, and it's going to be sort of like, a choose your own adventure where the adventure changes based on what goes down on Sunday when those lottery balls are pulled. If they end up picking in the top 6, I think, again, the cap space route kind of becomes less viable. I think they're going to be more inclined next season either to tank all the way to the bottom right quick so they don't have to worry about, conveying their pick and stressing it up to lottery night next season. And, they'll just try to keep their pick very, very hard, which I think would be bad. First of all, I think that's a terrible idea. I think wasting another season in the hopes of drafting a franchise savior at the top of the draft is silly. And you're already working into Scotty Barnes' second contract with mostly losing on the resume. That's not a good recipe for long-term sustainable success when you have a guy like Scotty Barnes. And so if they do keep the pick in the top 6, I actually think they'll be more inclined to try to make the team as good as possible next season. So they accept, hey, like, we're conveying the pick next year. That's out the door anyway. Let's build as good a team as possible right now to give over the 15th pick next season or the 17th pick. Just try to be a play-in playoff team if things really break right for us and not worry about giving over a primo 7th or 8th overall selection to the Spurs like they might give up this year in a draft that is significantly less stacked than next year's based on all of the scouting intel that's out there. Again, it all kind of comes down to Sunday, 5 days away. Thankfully, we'll get some clarity on what's coming up here. But if they keep that pick, I would expect that they might go in and say, hey, like, you know what? Let's go and try to build to this roster. Let's go and try to make a swing trade or something like that. We've got another high pick in the drawer. Maybe we want the future picks from the Pacers a little bit less or whatever. And maybe they try to make something happen there. Maybe they trade their own picks at 19 and 31 if they jump up in the draft. There's all sorts of things that could happen. And we'll have a bit more clarity on sort of what those next dominoes will be once the lottery goes down and we have an actual clear picture of what the starting point for this offseason is. If they convey the pick and you go into next season not worried about it, I think that opens up a ton of different possibilities from sort of keeping the options open for a late, soft tank if things aren't going well around the trade deadline. Maybe you don't tank all the way to the bottom 5, but you tank to 6, 7, 8 and boost your odds, kind of like what we saw this year or in the Tampa season. Or if they have conveyed the pick and they have all their picks available again, maybe they start going big game hunting with trades. Who's to say? But yeah, lots of different things could happen. We will start to have a bit of a better idea of what are the most likely to happen once that lottery gets pulled on Sunday. Next question here, also tied to the offseason and sort of how the Raptors come in. It comes from our pal Dave Morisuti over at Locked On Leafs. Sorry, buddy, them buds not doing so hot. But his question is, hey, Sean, longtime listener, first-time caller, what is your ideal starting lineup for opening night? This is a good question. It's an important question. I think for me, as it stands right now, we can do like the sort of pie in the sky dream outcomes. We can do the more realistic outcomes, I suppose. If we're going pie in the sky, I think the Raptors convey their pick. They go into the offseason with a little bit of cap space to work with, some cap flexibility, and they either find a trade with a team that is strapped for money, worried about the second apron, had a playoff exit that was sort of beneath their station, Those teams feel like they might be a little further and fewer between. The Wolves certainly aren't going to be picked apart for scraps. They look like they might win the whole damn title. I think the Pelicans, it's been pretty clear, like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy ain't going anywhere. Brandon Ingram's the move. And while I was for a second kind of in on Brandon Ingram as the fifth starter for this team at the 3, I think I've softened my stance on that. I worry about him as like a role player fit. Plus I don't want another year of a pending UFA hanging over the team. So I think I'm out on Brandon Ingram, but there will be potential moves out there to take advantage of teams that have, financial concerns. How those all take shape, we'll see. It's probably like a less likely outcome. You'll have to get super lucky, be in the right place at the right time. The other sort of avenue is you find someone who you can just go and straight up trade for without having to worry about sort of absorbing salary relief and stuff like that. It's just like a classic big old swing trade. And the guy who stands out for me is like, if they could get this done, give all of the awards, give all of the flowers, give all of the statues to the front office. The Raptors go into into next season with a starting 5 of Quickly, Barrett, Barnes, Pirtle, and Mikal Bridges at the 3. What a dream that would be. That would be extremely in on that idea. Again, pie in the sky, probably not going to happen. But if the Raptors aren't at least calling up and saying, hey, you're the Nets, you guys are kind of a mess and with a rudderless direction, and Mikal Bridges clearly isn't the best player on your team. What if you gave us that guy? We'll give you all these surplus picks we have. Maybe we throw in Grady Dick. Maybe we throw in something else. And then all of a sudden, Mikal Bridges is on the Raptors, comprising a beautiful starting 5 of excellent basketball and wing defense and everything. That'd be pretty damn rad. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be, to answer Dave's question, I think my like dream ideal starting lineup to go into next season. If you don't do that, yeah, I suppose there's nothing wrong if Gary Trent Jr. is still your starting 2 guard. It's not my dream outcome by any means, but I'm not like upset about that because I think it just suggests that they read the market and found they weren't going to go find players better than Gary Trent Jr. and Bruce Brown, who I continue to think are kind of a package deal this summer. And so, I think it's a fine outcome if that's the case. That starting lineup with Gary Trent Jr. in there down the stretch of the season when they got chances to play was like a plus 11 per 100 possessions. They were very good. Quickly, Trent, Barrett, Barnes, Pirtle. And so I wouldn't be upset about that necessarily. Maybe not the most encouraging. It's not going to get you kind of jumping out of your seat. If they go and find a wing type, can they go and find a way to get Patrick Williams on their team? Can they go and find a way to sign, Caleb Martin or something like that? I'm not like a huge Caleb Martin guy. Is that the best outcome? That's hard to say. I think it's like go big or stay with what you got are kind of my 2 preferred outcomes right now. I think this free agent class might be kind of a bummer. Sitting it out might not be the worst idea. And so you either swing for the fences with a guy like Mikal Bridges or one of those potentially available wings that can slide RJ Barrett over to the 2. And if that doesn't happen, I think Bruce Brown and Gary Trent Jr. coming back and Gary Trent Jr. starting is kind of fine as well. I'm not too upset about that. You can try another transaction cycle to go find your wing, whether at the deadline or next summer. We'll come back on the other side, get into a couple questions about rebranding the Toronto Raptors, a thing that everyone knows has been a hobby horse for me this season. We'll continue to spread the propaganda of bringing back purple coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. And look, Mother's Day is coming up. Maybe you can't be near your mother on Mother's Day. Maybe you live far apart, whatever it might be. That's okay because DoorDash is there to help you let your mom know that you're thinking about her this Mother's Day if, in fact, you cannot be together. I can't be with my mom. She lives far away. It bums me out. I wish I could see her this weekend, but it's just not going to work out with our various schedules and things like that. But that's okay because I got DoorDash to help me out and send something to her that she's going to love. It can be personal. It can be flowers. It can be tech. It can be anything that your mom loves. You can send something to her via DoorDash. For me, my mom loves to paint. She's a big-time painter. She's got a little studio and a little setup. She likes to do like landscapes and stuff like that. Maybe I'll send her a little painting kit, some fresh watercolors, whatever it might be. I can do that with DoorDash. Shop with savings that would make her proud with a Dash Pass membership as well. You'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees apply. Terms apply as well. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, wrapping up the mailbag here. We got a couple of questions here. We will have to probably do a part 2 of the mailbag tomorrow, so keep an eye out there. But we got a couple of questions to do with the Toronto Raptors branding. Questions that came in from Willie C 4699 and Muggsy, both in the Discord. And let's just kind of get into both of them. The first one here is from Muggsy. I'm so frustrated with the Raptors branding. It's boring and unoriginal. They look more like the Blazers or the Bulls than the Raptors. What are the odds of a rebrand on the horizon and the possible return of purple? And the follow-up question, similar question from Willie C 4699 asks, Raptors rebrand, as we know it looks like a Raptors rebrand, is not only possible but likely for next season. I'm assuming a majority of fans want to bring back the purple and red Raptor. What alternate colors could the Raptors shift to for next season? Blue and white to match the Leafs and Jays, perhaps? Please, God, no. That's the right answer, Willie C. Yeah, for me, I've been saying this all season long. It's the 30th season next year. I think it will be like full-on malpractice, basically, if the Raptors don't do a rebrand of some kind. I think the jersey set they've had since the Tampa season has been bad. It's just not a good look. The chevron is tired. We get it. The chevron points north. Great. Okay, cool. We understand. It's like on the nose at this point. It was way better when it was like a thing on the side of the jersey, just like a little nod to a compass pointing north. As the main feature of these jerseys, it's clunky. It looks bad. Hey, look, I was someone who was a proponent of the chevron early on. I have been beaten over the head with it so much that I no longer think it is any good. And I kind of think we get it. They're north. We understand the reference here. Let's change something up and stop making it so on the nose. I think the color scheme, yeah, red, black, and white. I completely understand why they switched to it in the mid-2000s. Purple had gone out of style. The team had only been associated with losing essentially under purple. It was the post-Vince Carter era. They needed to kind of change things up and get the stink of that whole divorce off of them. I got it. And like you stick through that through the championship era. And I think the jersey set they had between like 2015 and 2021, I guess it was, or 2020, the end of the bubble season, like perfectly good jersey set. They were classic. They were crisp. They looked good. I liked the sort of unique word number fonts and stuff like that. Those were solid jerseys. But since then, they've just become like a diluted kind of ugly version of those. The white jersey with the red chevron has to be one of the single worst jerseys in basketball. It stinks. It's like a practice jersey. It's like a jersey you'd find at a discount store, a knockoff store, whatever. It's not a good looking uniform. I never see people out in the wild with the white current home Raptors jersey because it's bad. And so, yeah, they are in dire need of a rebrand. And I think it would be foolish for them not to go back to purple for the 30th season. Purple is cool again. It's like the most popular color. Maybe that makes you a bit of a follower, but like the Raptors were there first. If the Raptors go back to purple, everyone will be like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's a good color scheme. They have the freshly, designed Vince Carter dunking Raptor logo. I would be fully down if that was the updated version of the Raptor logo they wanted to use as opposed to the full scale Raptor from back in the 90s. They want a modern twist on it. Works for me. Have Vince Carter as the Raptor dunking. It pays homage to the two best dunkers of all time, Vince Carter and the Raptor. That's great. It doesn't have to be a like-for-like carbon copy of the original jersey set, but would anyone complain if it was? Those purple and whites are incredible with the little zigzag pinstripes and the logo on the front. They're outstanding jerseys. Everyone agrees they're like one of the best throwbacks. And it's been far too long. Like there have been many franchises that have gone to their throwbacks in way quicker order than the Raptors have gone back to theirs. And so, yeah, I am fully endorsing a full rebrand. If anyone at MLSC is listening to this podcast, hi, welcome into the show. Subscribe, please. Leave a like and stuff and all of that. But also listen to me. Go with purple. You will make so much money. It's unbelievable. I know this is how these decisions get made. Do the rebrand. Go back to the dinosaur. Redo the court. When the Raptors had that special court during the 2019-20 season, when they had the white throwbacks, that court was beautiful. It was pristine. It was the best alternate court we've seen in the NBA since they started doing alternate courts. It's just such a great idea. I don't know how it hasn't been done. Maybe they were just saving it for the 30th season. And maybe I'm getting mad and angry about them not doing it. prematurely. And this is exactly what's going to happen, in which case I will be very, very happy. But until then, I'm sick of the red, sick of the current jersey set. It's associated now with some kind of not so fun, fallow years for the team. Go back to the original purple and red. I can't imagine anyone will have a problem with that. As far as other colors to mess around with, I mean, I don't need it. Like, I could stand to have like one red, black, and white jersey to pay homage to like the championship era teams. If you wanted to get a jersey from the 2016-17 jersey set and have that be an alternate jersey, totally fine. Works for me. Fun era. They won lots of games. Kyle Lowry was on the team wearing it. It's a cool jersey I have great associations with. If you're going like, any other color, I know the blue and white Huskies thing people like. Like, I like that the Raptors aren't the Blue Jays or the Leafs, the two loseriest loser franchises there are. And I say this as a unabashed supporter of both, but they're loser franchises. Like, you don't need to go and associate yourself with that. And when it comes to like other colors, I'm pretty darn sick of the OVO thing. Not to pile on Drake or anything like that, but I'm pretty darn sick of the OVO color scheme. I'm sure it'll stick around because money or whatever. But if they got rid of the black and gold, I would be by no means upset. You could maybe tell I have strong opinions on this from this segment. And people listen to the show all the time would know that I have strong opinions on this. But I'm glad I've gotten a forum, a platform here to talk about why it is just so damn necessary for the team to change their jersey set, their logo set, everything going into next season. It's a new era. Pascal and OG are gone. Fred VanVleet's gone. It's Scotty Barnes' team. Quickly's here. Grady Dick is here. Put him in some purple threads. Have some fun with it. And, again, make all of the money in the world on merch. You will make so much money. It's unbelievable. Go do it. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the listeners who sent in the questions. If I didn't get to your question, I'll get to it on tomorrow's show when I double down on the mailbags. I look forward to getting into those. And as always, jump in the Discord. That's where you will get your questions asked or answered first. If you drop them, I'll also take some from Twitter sometimes, but also Twitter is very bad and hard to use. And so I don't use it all that much. But just jump on into the Discord and we'll see you there. Link in the description. It's free to join. Would love to see you part of our listener family over there. Of course, you can find the show for free. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend on your favorite podcast apps. It's always appreciated. We're on YouTube as well. Subscribe to the show there. We'll be back again tomorrow with more mailbag questions answered from you, the listeners. In the meantime, go back and listen to yesterday's show where Vivek and I talked about Scotty Barnes and what we want to see from him this offseason. Last week, tons of draft content, just like draft profiles out the wazoo. You can go check all those out from last week. I'll have more of that later this week as well. And I mentioned Friday, S. Baraheny is joining me, and we're going to have the final keep or convey debate. He thinks they should keep the pick. I want them to convey the pick. Obviously, it's neither of us have any control over it, but we'll talk about what the best outcome is for the Raptors on Friday. You have that to look forward to as well. Thanks as always for hanging out. We will talk to you again on a Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.